Good evening, everyone, and welcome to the Tuesday, August 22nd, 2023 Facilities Committee meeting. It's the first Facilities Committee meeting of the 23-24 school year, and I hope everyone's had a great summer thus far. It's not yet over, so enjoy these last few days. With us today, as you can see, I am virtual, and then present at the meeting is Ms. Stern, Ms. Dunn, and Ms. Solomon. And I believe our student rep, Bridget Walsh, is unable to attend tonight as well. So with that, I will start with the first item on the agenda, administrative remarks. Mr. Dolan.
Thank you, Mrs. Monahan. Tonight, we do not have any action items. Will be informational items. We're going to touch quickly on North Wayne Field, which is a township project on a district-owned property. We're going to do a quick update on what summer work has happened in our capital projects for this 23-24 year. We'll give a quick update on the accessibility and wellness project at the high school, and then we will give an update on our new Ithan Elementary. And by way of introductions to help with that, item number 4 is Damian Spar from Site Logic, our construction management firm. And then we can get right into the agenda items.
Great, thank you very much. With that, I will move on to item number 2, public comment. Is there any public comment? No? Okay. Third item on the agenda is the review of minutes. Has everyone had an opportunity to review the minutes? Anyone have any comments or comments? No? Okay. So we reviewed the minutes. Next on the agenda is item 4.01, the North Wayne Field Lot SWM Best Practices Improvements. Mr. Dolan?
Thank you. I'm going to bring up one slide on the North Wayne project. Going to minimize Ms. Monahan. Last September, the township came to us asking for permission to go out and engage an engineering firm to do work on improving the stormwater management at North Wayne Field Park. And we awarded that permission in the fall. They did engineering throughout the year, went out to bid in the spring, and began work after the school year was out. That work has run relatively smoothly, and it should be completed very soon. So in essence, they created some stormwater collection underneath and around the parking lot area itself, and then they replaced and added inlet collectors along the access road from North Wayne Avenue up to the back of the parking lot. And the effort there was to try to contain more water on site, less water that gets onto North Wayne and into the center of town. So this is not to solve flooding, but to reduce the amount in stormwater best practices, the amount of stormwater that runs off into the center of town. So it's part of their bigger picture plan to mitigate stormwater throughout the township. For us, since this is a district property, it meant and improvements to our property. So we have a new parking lot there. The wear course for the macadam, the asphalt, was done this past week. It looks like they're prepped and ready to do, the base course was done. It looks like they're prepped and ready to do the wear course probably in the coming week, if not this week. And they tell me that it will be finished before school buses are running. Talking to Joe Daniele at Transportation, it hasn't been, and he doesn't think it would be a problem even if they were finishing up when we start school, but it'd be nice to have it out of the way. So that's just a quick update on that project. It should be wrapping up in the next few weeks. And if you drive by there, normally I think you've probably seen the work happening in the last 6 weeks. Any questions?
Thanks, Mr. Dolan. Any questions or comments by committee members?
Yeah, I just have a quick question for you. What has your involvement been with this?
Almost zero. The township will give me a little update every once in a while. Sometimes they'll forward a 2-week lookout, which is their construction schedule, just to see if there's anything that we need to be concerned about. But I haven't had to go up there. I haven't had to be involved in any decisions. So it has been relatively painless and hasn't taken up any of our time.
Just curious. Thank you.
No, thank you. Good question.
Can you remind me, I feel like this is a property that we actually lease to the township, is that?
Correct.
So now that it's no longer stone, now that it's paved, are they responsible for maintaining the pavement?
As long as the lease continues, yeah, their snow removal, maintenance, upgrade, tree trimming,
Repainting the
clearing,
lines, that kind of
repainting the
stuff.
lines, all of
Okay.
that is on the township.
Okay, thanks.
Anyone else?
No, thank you.
Okay, great. Thank you very much. With that, I'll move on to the next agenda item, 4.02, the 2023-2024 capital projects update.
Okay, thank you.
Mr. Dolan.
And again, just one slide here to look at. This is just a listing that it may look familiar to you from our May and June meetings in a little bit of a different format here. All the projects that we're engaging in capital-wise for 23, 24 are listed out here. Quick highlight of just a few of them. Many of these projects are asphalt and resurfacing and repairs. We've been doing that work over the summer at our elementary schools and a little bit of patch and repair work at our high school. Most of that work is done. What isn't done will be completed in the coming weeks and before school opens. There are some projects that require a final color coat, so some of our play surfaces. That might not be done before school starts, but it would be done within the first few weeks of school starting. There's just a dry time between the finish coat and then when you can paint it, so to speak. So that's coming along nicely. The weather has cooperated for the most part on those projects. Some other projects are long lead items that have all been ordered over the summer, and we're just waiting for them to come in, and they'll be completed in the fall. Security cameras is an ongoing thing. We assess our needs, order, and then install cameras in-house. The library was a big project that you remember Dan Bechtel giving a presentation on. That has gone very well. The carpeting is finished, the paint touch-up are finished. We're just waiting on furniture. The furniture is due in the second week of September. In the first few weeks, our staff up there is going to set up any temporary furniture, folding chairs and tables that we would need. And so, unfortunately, we won't open with the brand-new furniture, but it's coming real soon, so it should look great. It's already looking good up there. I could highlight or go into any of these with questions. Those were my main highlights.
Okay, we can open it up for any questions from the committee. Ms. Dunn?
No, I've been to the library. They had the parents meet and greet there for the new principal and associate principal last week, and it looks nice.
Good.
So, and they warned parents that the furniture's on its way. So, but it does look, it's a very open space without the circulation desk and all in the corner that used to have all the cabinets with like the videos and stuff, like it's all empty and open. And
It's a little
Dr.
jarring,
McNamara
right?
made a joke about it. He said, "You're probably wondering why we call this the library when there are no books here." But no, the carpet looks very nice. It's definitely an improvement.
It is amazing. It looks empty from books right now, but if you had seen the books that are there, the books that remain when they were moved, it was a huge effort, and we had them filling up hallway after hallway for several weeks. So there's still a lot of books in there. It just doesn't look like it right now.
Great, Ms. Solomon?
Yeah, my question was about the library as well. So it will be fully functioning, it's just that the furniture's not, the new furniture's not in.
Correct.
Okay.
Fully functioning, ready to go right now, just temporary furniture. And we have plenty of that. We have folding tables and chairs that we
Yeah.
rotate through that whole building.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
And Ms. Stern?
I don't have any questions.
Okay.
I have no questions.
Okay. The only comment that I would make is I know item 1, 2, 3, 4, and 6 are from the feasibility study, and if we can just kind of put an asterisk on this because I know with the feasibility study, it's kind of the template that we're using or the benchmark that we're using as far as our capital plan, and just citing those items that were identified in that, I think would be helpful just for consistency.
Which items were they again?
1, 2, 1, 2, 4, 5, and 6. Sorry. 1, 2, 4, 5, and 6.
That's a good suggestion. That's easy done, so we'll have that for future. We can add a column or, as you say, just asterisks.
Yeah, and with the footnote at the bottom is what it is. Okay, great. Thanks for that update. So moving on to our next agenda item is 4.03, the RHS Accessibility and Wellness Project Update. Mr. Dolan?
Thank you. So for this update, you'll be happy to hear that we do not have any change orders to do this month. So it's been a while since we've been able to say that. What I want to do is just a quick walkthrough using the video rendering, because I think it.
We don't have anything.
I don't think we have a
There-
handout for
Yeah,
that.
yeah,
Okay.
there's nothing in your packet, and there's no information. I'm just going to speak to where we're at using the video. I'm going to bring it up right now. I won't play the music, and I won't let it go the whole 4 minutes here. But I just want to, I thought this would be a good way to see the area. We haven't had a drone out there. I want to replicate this in reality now because we really could. But we need to get Breslin out there with a drone. So this is a walkthrough of the site. I'll start to let it play a little bit here. The tennis courts are now complete. The area at the loop has been paved over the summer. The railings and handrails that we were waiting for have now been installed. So tennis for fall sports is down here finally using these 6 upper courts for the first time in, I think, 3 years now, 2 years. The access ramp up between Prevost Field and the tennis courts is open. Any of these areas that look beautiful in the rendering where grass is lush, we're not quite there yet. We've got a lot of that grass planted in the late summer, so it's really not the season for it. Some of it's weeds, some of it is actually taking. The last month, surprisingly, a lot of grass was growing. So as you drive through there, just be patient. The planting beds, the grass, they're all going to start looking better and better as we get deeper into the fall and certainly by next spring. But they're all stabilized now to the point where we've been able to pull some erosion and sediment controls, some silt socks out. Some, and we'll get to it in a minute, are still in place. I'm going to pause here for just a second. The field is in shape. Fall sports are using the field every day. There's a tunnel, if you recall, that comes out of the team rooms back here underneath the fitness center. There's a little ceiling under there that is not complete yet. That's going to be done in the next few weeks. I say that because that's a common theme. There are about 5 or 6 areas here where materials were delayed and they're still being installed right now. That's one of those areas. And hopefully they're all done before our first football game on, I think it's September 1st, a Friday night. So, but I don't want to guarantee that. They'll be safe. But the effort is slow and steady. It's delicate work, and the materials came in very late, but we're getting there with that.
Mr. Dolan, can I just ask, are they,
Sure.
I mean, this project's been going on long enough. Is this a continuing supply chain issue from the pandemic, or is this our contractor didn't realize lead times are still very long and didn't order them in timely fashion?
A little bit of both, on those panels. Yeah, there was some discrepancy as to size, shop drawings, and it was a long lead item to begin with. So in some areas, materials came in wrong and then had to be reordered. In some areas, they hadn't been ordered. And some of it was in and installed last year. It's just the trickier stuff took a little while.
Can I just, the one thing, because your sentences kind of blended together, and I don't want anybody to misunderstand.
yeah.
When you said it's not done, you're hoping it'll be done for the football game, whatever happens, though, it will be safe. We won't let people in there.
Correct.
So they kind of, I just want to make sure it will be safe.
It will be safe.
Okay.
Yeah, any of the areas that are not completed are cosmetic primarily. Some of it does have to be done on lift work. Those materials, tools, lifts would be out of the way and safed off if they're still present during that. Still, the hope is that they're not there, but they might be.
Mr.
Yeah.
Dolan, I'm going to mention this only because I drove up there last night and I'm looking at the rendering today. First of all, it looked beautiful last night. I do want to say that. 2 big differences. I got really used to this rendering and really thought this is exactly what it would look like because that's what the rendering is.
Sure.
The field is multicolored.
It is. It is.
I don't happen to care for it. It's perfectly fine, But the bigger thing was that it's not showing multicolored on here, so I just wasn't expecting it. And then and that's not a problem, I'm just saying,
Sure.
I'm actually commenting on this as we moved into the next agenda item, and we start to see renderings and computer images of Ithan, what it's gonna be is what I wanna see. Just, that's me personally, I bet other board members. And the other thing that's missing from this rendering, again, it's not a problem, I understand the safety issue. We have a lot more nets up on both ends of the field, and they are important. Ms. Dunn just mentioned safety, but it does really change the look of the openness that we see in the computer rendering to not, you don't see quite as clearly through things as you think you will down to the field from the driveway or from up above, because there are safety nets. I don't know why they didn't include them in here. Maybe it's to make it look more open and all that, but it was a surprise to see them all.
So it's a good point. This is a tool that was used early on in design to give us a sense of what the space would be like, but not to detail it all the way out. So you usually don't go to that level on the renderings. The field is a good example. The field that we see out there now is pretty common to what most high school athletic fields are used, because we're using them for multiple sports, right? So different layouts on the turf.
Yeah, and it looks
But-
beautiful. It's just not my personal preference, but
Sure.
that doesn't actually matter. So, it doesn't. I'm just saying, but what more I was thrown is that I've been looking at a particular rendering. And I only say that to inform where we can be consistent about what things are actually going to be versus what the rendering is showing us it's going to be
That's a good
for
point.
the next project.
And for the next project, what we can do is we can talk about leaning heavier into the renderings for certain things. No, and then also just messaging out that, hey, this is a rendering and it's not going to
That's really more my point. Sorry. Yes.
No, I appreciate it. I thought that might be an issue too when I brought this up, so I should have said that going in. You know, it does look different. The details look different. One example off to the left, I'm going to look at Miss Solomon here. Those trees are 20 years from now. They're not what they look like today, but they'll get there. You know, and we're actually hoping to put more trees in as we go.
So, this is a different topic. It's segue to the trees. So some of the trees aren't making it.
Correct.
So what's the plan?
So they're warranted for a year. I'm asking, there's a meeting actually with ELA tomorrow and the general contractor on site and one of the items is to look at the trees. I've asked them to take the ones that are clearly dead out, even if you just have to put a marker in there. We can't plant a new tree until we get closer to end of September, October. They have a year in which they're all under warranty. So, but it is, you're right, you go up there now and you see a few that haven't made it through the summer and they don't look great.
But so they will be coming in and replanting it into
Absolutely,
September? Okay.
yeah. And then in the future, we may fill in the blanks a little bit too. We will put a lot of trees in this project, a lot, and they will fill out. But there's areas where we have opportunity to put more in, and that I'd like to do that, or recommend to do that.
And we don't have to discuss this now, but just going back, if some of the nets that were up for lacrosse don't need to still be up or are still up, I didn't know if that was what you were seeing, and I was just up there the other day, and I'm trying to picture which nets. So we could talk offline. We don't have to answer now, but unless you know off the top of your head, are some of the nets up
I do.
now that
Some of
might
the
not
nets
be
are
up
up.
for the fall?
Well, it's true. So for football games, we could drop those nets, but we'd have to remove the poles. So we're going to talk, I have a meeting next week to talk about what we're going to do and when we're going to do it. Springfield high school had similar nets. They're up there so that we can run track while, let's say, lacrosse is practicing, so the lacrosse ball doesn't hit somebody who's running. But we found it's safer to leave them up while we're doing multiple things, particularly with track running while other sports are going on. During games, they should either come down or they get pads put on them. Springfield chose to just get pads and leave them up all the time because of the effort to take 20-foot poles down. So that's actually a good question, because there's a lot of these things. It's like we're getting into our new space, and as we're breaking it in, we're going to be learning and tweaking and fixing things as we go. It'll be next year before we have a perfect rhythm and you know, we know exactly what we're doing at every football game. It's not going to be like the crew down at Citizens Bank Park or the Link this year, but it's going to be great, and we're going to keep
I did start
learning.
off by saying, it's beautiful up there.
You did.
It's
You did. Well, while setting expectations, so I did stop here for a reason. So these 5 canopies that are over the pool windows and the pool doors, They weren't in the project. We had a line of demarcation. They are in desperate need of repair. They are not beautiful. So there's going to be things like that where, gosh, they didn't look so bad 3 years ago, but now everything around it is new. Well, we're going to replace. We're getting bids actually. I've been talking to our roofer about going out to bid. So you'll look for that to be something that I'll bring up in future capital stuff. We're going to make them safe, but they just won't be pretty right now. The idea is that if we can tackle them real soon, we will. Okay, so I'd say that publicly because a lot of people are going to go there and see the things that aren't done, and a lot of those things were just not even in the scope to begin with. All right. We're going to jump ahead a little bit. Well, actually, maybe I jumped too far ahead. I do want to. I want to walk us through. We're going to come on our left-hand side of the screen very soon. You're going to come up to the field house. And so that has been complete for the most part for quite a while, with the exception of this canopy. So it kind of looked incomplete for a while. As of this week, finally the canopy is done. There's still a few little drip edge boards along here that need to get done, and they need to clean up their materials and kind of sweep up and get out of there. But I'm encouraged now because 3 weeks ago, it looked like that wasn't going to be done in time for the opening of school. Now it is. So this whole area up here is great, and we can start opening it up and using it. So we're happy about that. And inside that building, remember, we have 2 team rooms, concession stands, bathrooms. The Yankee bleachers have been complete for quite a while, so we've used them for a few seasons now. Again, this area along here that we see, those trees are little babies right now. They're going to grow up to look like that in 15, 20 years. This is a great way to see the whole sprawling of the project from the loop all the way around to Yankee Field. I'm going to jump up again a little bit here. Oops, I didn't want to go that far. Something else just to highlight is, where is it? I'm going to let it run because we'll get there in a second. Just this week, PennDOT put in the Emlyn-Tunnell Way signs. So we finally, our private campus road here, which we put out for a while now to have the name updated and changed, is finally now officially Emlyn-Tunnell Road. So that is in place. And then this, what we call the painted building, believe it or not, that's the old field house. That's what it was called back when the high school was first built. This, I'm not allowed to tell you what the theme is this year, but the seniors have been out there the past week and a half painting that building. So you have to drive by yourself to see what the theme is. And then as we bicycle up Emlyn-Tunnell Way, this whole area is open and complete. So these little planting beds will get planted out in the fall. Folks are parking up here now.
Hey, Bill, do we have a plan? I've noticed, so that area, the little cutout there where there's some parking,
Yep.
there's actually also striping, and people aren't supposed to park there. And every time I've been there in the evening to drop people off, there are people parked there.
That's
What are we doing to kind of enforce that that's supposed to be where we drop off kids, not
You're
where you
right.
park?
We have to do a combination of things. Probably more potent signage, even if it's temporary signage, getting the messaging out a little bit more, and getting the contractors out of there. It's been difficult because I have allowed the contractors working on the
Yeah, but
nest to
this is
park
7
there.
or 8 o'clock at night. I'm talking, it's
But
parents and coaches and students.
And what they're seeing is when they arrive, they're seeing contractors parked there, pulling out, and they're pulling in. And we haven't gotten on top of it, but you bring up a good point. It's on our list of things that needs to be enforced. Yeah, because you're right, that is a drop-off only section, and it's sectioned as such. There's some no parking signs there, but they're not huge,
They're
and maybe we
big,
need.
bold, diagonal white lines. You're being very kind. It's
No.
very obvious.
Well,
You're not
now
supposed to
they're.
park there. On
You're right. There are,
there's
but
a
there
whole
are also 3 areas that don't have the lines, and they're also being parked.
The
in.
lined sections are full of cars too.
That's correct. So that's, you're right, that's obvious. And then once school starts, we start ticketing. So there'll be a reinforcement of that. I wanted to stop right here for a second too. So again, this is that area that just got completed. Underneath the sky bridge that leads over to the nest, the upper part of the field house, that just got completed this week. The ticket booth soffit right here has not been completed yet, so they're moving their way towards that, all right? That's one of those areas that I was mentioning. I'll jump ahead a little bit here. The ramp systems are up and running. I mean, there's some touch-ups and caulking and things that need to happen there. Again, the grass growing on the left is some wildflowers coming in, but also some weeds, so that'll establish itself over the next year, and we'll get a maintenance program going for that. We're tackling everything that we can. Some of those areas, if you pull the weeds out, you're pulling the good stuff out too. So some of that we just have to overseed and work and let it. I should bring our landscaper in because he can explain it better than I can. But some of those wildflower areas, they're going to take a year to develop. They're going to look bad for a year, and then they're going to start to look better, and then they're going to look awesome. So
when you say wildflower, there's
like a wildflower mix in
so
some
are we
of those
modeling
areas.
this kind of, at the top of King of Prussia, or at the top of Radnor Chester Road where it meets King of Prussia? There's a beautiful it's I think the private, or I don't know who maintains that garden, but it changes colors. Yeah, maybe it's private, but it changes colors all year
Is
long.
this the
It's
Penn
like
Med?
poppies.
or-
No. At the where Radnor Chester Road meets King of Prussia, above Air Products.
That's a
Oh,
private
yeah.
home.
That I
It's
see
a
what you mean.
private
That garden is
property, yeah.
Beautiful, but it's a wildflower mix that keeps changing over.
So we're starting to have discussions about, not only for here, but also for Ithan and throughout the district, do we start to switch over to meadows and wildflowers and stuff? They have their issues too, so we're in the exploratory informational stages for that now. We can experiment a little here. When you look across the street at Penn Med, they've got a good thing going there.
Theirs looks nice as well,
It
but this
does.
other one's really pretty.
But we
colors.
haven't priced out how to get that and maintain that quite yet. So it's on our list, and they're very good questions. Okay, so again, some areas that are just coming complete now. This is the bump out addition. There's a storage room and an office at the natatorium. Contractors just cleared their stuff out last week and put a final coat on the floor. So this week we'll start to occupy it. I'll stop here for just a second. The canopy is another area here. This is the natatorium drop-off canopy. That area there is not completed at the top. They're moving towards that right now, and we'll start working on that. The signage that you see up above the canopy was initially designed to sit here. We've decided it's going to actually fit better on the building. That won't be installed probably until the next month or so, but that's coming. This parking lot is complete with the exception of there's a fence that separates the maintenance parking, the maintenance yard, from the accessible parking and the staff parking that's up here. That fence was originally specified and selected as a aluminum privacy fence. You couldn't see through it at all. We were informed in June that it was not being made anymore. We couldn't get it. So we've been through looking at options right now. It may be a blessing in disguise because we're finding out I've talked to a couple different fence people that if you throw balls against it, if you practice lacrosse on it, if you ding it with a trash truck, it starts to look unsightly. So we have a meeting tomorrow morning with 2 fence people to talk about 3 different options. We're going to choose one and then get that in place. So the fence should come online in probably the next 4 to 6 weeks, maybe sooner.
Well, I think that looks fine, that you can see through it.
It does, but again, to Mrs. Stern's point about the rendering and the reality, my maintenance guys are good, but they're not that neat. Sometimes there's snow plows, trash trucks back in there coming and going. So we're coming up, one of the options is sort of a hybrid that's not completely private, but not as ornamental and open as this.
So this is a good point for me to mention my
Yes, and
noise issue, because there's not new business on the agenda. But I do want to tell you, I walked by the fence you and I discussed, and I think it looks fine.
good.
Yeah, so.
That's one of the options.
Mr. Dolan had given me a heads up about this fence. And by the way, if you really look at that, that's not a privacy fence. You can see right through that one.
Now,
That's
in
just an
the,
aluminum
in the
fence.
rendering, it was ornamental. By the time we got through design development and design
It's gonna be
documents,
privacy.
it was
And
gonna
I
be privacy.
think your points
Yeah.
and concerns about, once it starts getting dinged up by
Yeah.
plows, trucks, cars, whatevers, it will not look so nice. And the
And the other thing we-
small grid, I would call that the small grid chain link fence
Yeah.
that's.
They call it a micro
Micro.
microfabric. Yeah.
I thought it looked nice. I want to bring to your attention, Ms. Monahan and Mr. Dolan know I'm going to say this. I was up at the high school last night driving through on my way home. there are some very loud, there's some equipment on the back of the building, right near this entrance, that's really loud. I reached out to Mr. Dolan, he's all over it, he knows all about it, he's already been aware of it. But I'm saying it publicly because there may come a point where the administration will come back and say, it's some old equipment that's problematic. They're making sure that there's no issue with the new equipment. But it was a decibel that is disturbing. And I am a person, for a number of reasons, is I'm very aware and very cognizant of and want to be very protective of our students' hearing and our employees' hearing. And this kind of constant noise is not good for people's hearing. And so I'm hopeful that Mr. Dolan can continue to work with his staff and figure out addressing whatever's going on with those compressors, but we may need to do something to, now that some of the trees are gone up on the hill. I mean, he gave me a really great explanation, but there's a sound, it needs to be addressed. I'm hopeful that you all can look at it. These trees were not, it was the pine trees that were not in good shape, but the point of the story is, it was pretty noticeable noise. And I just want people, if they hear this, to know that we are aware of it, and Mr. Dolan is already all on top of it, and, you know, and understands and agrees with my concern, but is gonna look into it.
So what is it, an air conditioner?
Yeah, it's probably a couple of things. It's probably our chiller, and then up on top of this roof, there is a dehumidifier system existing that services mostly the natatorium. And they're running loud. They've been running loud for a while. I'm not sure that they can be tuned up without replacement. And they are on the big capital list. They just may have to be moved up a little. We're also making sure that all the new units that have been put up there are running as smooth as they can be. So we're looking into that and making sure that that's the case. And
And is a sound baffle a possibility? Or
I'm
are they
gonna-
not very effective?
I don't think that they're the magic. They may help. I have to look into that a little
Okay.
bit more, but I'm not sure that they're going to do all of it. And then you bring up a really good point about the trees. There was a strand of evergreens up there. We lost 3 or 4 of them during storms before we even started this project, so they were on their way out, and they would not have. I mean, Township told us they wouldn't survive the cut into the hill for this project, so we took them out. They weren't as full as they used to be too. They were starting to look like lollipops. But there's no question when they were put up that they helped with sound. So it might have been something we never noticed before. And as these things get older and older, they do get louder and louder, kind of like me. So, but we're working on that, and thank you for bringing it up. So I wanted to point out the fence. I'm going to just real quick jump inside to give a quick as you know, inside here will take us into the natatorium, straight down a corridor towards the gymnasium. I'll just a quick note, even though it's not accessibility and wellness related, the gym was painted. You saw that on our capital report, and the gym floor was done. So now we have new air conditioning, a new sound system, new floors, new paint in the gym. So it looks great. And I think if you get a chance to go in there and take a look, that would be excellent. If you go in here and go to the left, and I'll stop it here for a second, the Spirit Gallery is now finished as far as construction goes. So what we have to do now is fill it. Furniture here was being discussed in the springtime, hasn't been ordered yet. So that, as soon as the new administration gets kind of in the saddle, we'll go back to that and get that ordered. The display cases there's a Spirit Gallery group that's working on them. I did have a chance to talk to them last week, and what's coming is pretty amazing, almost like museum level, some of the stuff I was talking. I couldn't believe what we have in our archives. It's really neat. But they're not filled yet, and nor do I think they should be just filled up quickly. So they're working on displays. I think there'll be displays in time in the next 2 weeks. We'll see some stuff, but it's a rotating. From what I'm told, it's going to be like a rotating display. And then the walls you see here. There's one here straight ahead, and then one to the right. Both will have. We call them wraps, but basically it's vinyl wallpapering that has, like you would see on a bank wall with graphics. With, again, incredible amount of detail, history, cultivated spirit and history of Radnor. I believe that we're about a week away from all the proofs being approved, and then I think it's a 10-day printing and then an installation. So we're right around the corner from seeing some of that stuff go up. It won't be up for the start of school, but shortly after. And that's as good a place as any to stop, give you a quick update. I also just want to let you know that I expect to come back next month, maybe talk about finances, see where we're at. Are there any change orders that need to be closed out? I know we don't want to see any. The last change order we brought was a negative, so that was good.
I was gonna say, feel free to bring negative
You can bring
change orders.
negative ones. And, you know, I had planned to have Kelby here next month just to give us a, you know, State of the Union on the project. So any questions on this agenda item?
Thank you. And thanks
Okay.
for humoring us as we interrupted you throughout, but I think it's just a lot easier as the process goes. to
No,
ask
that was
pictures
helpful.
up.
Thank you, Mr. Dolan. That was very, very helpful. Hopefully, our next view will be a real photo of a drone, perhaps flying through. I think that would be nice to see when it's all said and done. Anyway, all right, moving on to our next agenda item is 4.04, building the new Ithan Elementary School project update. So again, Mr. Dolan, I'll let you take it from here.
Thank you. And I'm going to invite Damian Spar from SiteLogic to join us right now. SiteLogic was approved as our construction manager, construction management firm for our new Ithan project in June, and Damian's been working with us this summer through our due diligence work and our schematic design work. So I'm going to bring up the slides, again, introduce Damian and kick it off to him. I'll jump in as needed, but he's pretty eloquent, and not to put too much pressure on you, but go ahead and bring us up to speed, Damian.
Thank you. It's nice to see all of you. Feel free to interrupt me as we go. I think I know enough about the board that a good dialogue is much better than waiting till the end. So please, at any time, just jump in and we'll answer the questions.
You don't know what you're welcoming here.
I've studied the video. It's like we do in football. You watch the video and you know what's going to happen to you when you're on defense.
He knows to be afraid of all of
Knows
us.
the
I
players.
am.
We trust that you'll move us along, though, if needed.
Yes,
All right.
I will. I'm cautiously optimistic.
All right.
So if we go to the first agenda page, which I think is too deep here, our intention for today is to start our communication process. This communication process we're going to outline in here, but as you're seeing these updates, and these are going to go for months during the construction or the pre-construction period, you're going to see updates like this. So I'm happy to make adjustments. I've been working with the administration. I think we've had some input from Mrs. Monahan as well, just to start to set this up so that as we go, it gets better and it really becomes something that works very nicely for the board. And the way that we've set up our agenda for now is to talk about the decisions and directions that we've had to date, which we also call our knowns. We'll talk about work since the last update review. In this particular update, we're going to talk about communication planning because we've been thoughtful about that, and we discuss it at our design meetings, and we had one last week, and we'll be having one again tomorrow. We'll talk about work that's coming up this month. A little bit of a longer view with upcoming board decisions when we have those. And then, of course, we'll recap with dates and actions because we think it's important that the board always knows a month or two ahead of time, something's coming. Be thoughtful about looking at it because we're going to ask you to make a decision or make a vote. So on decisions and direction to date, and by the way, Mr. Pauling, Mr. Dolan, and I are working on a piece that will be in your board packet. So what we're trying to do is create a memorandum that provides some of this information in your board packet that happens once a month as well. There are other communications we'll talk about, but we're working to be consistent and make sure that you get to a point and say, no, we already know this, and that's the point. If we get to there, we'll know that we're communicating enough. So decisions.
And sorry to interrupt. So that communication to the board, will that kick off for week's meeting, like in the board packets next week?
Yes, is it this week or next? Yeah, this Friday. This
Great.
Friday. It's in draft form. It'll be finalized tomorrow for your board packet for Friday. I'm looking at you over here. I'm not sure where you're seeing me from, but that's what's happening. So I think that's what you're after. Thank you. So decisions and directions to date. In May, the programming was approved by the board. That is your spaces, how those spaces are going to be occupied, some of the adjacencies, et cetera. When we talk about that being approved, it doesn't mean, it doesn't change a little bit, but it means it was generally accepted so that the design could proceed. Also with that in May, the board looked at layouts and took into account the way those were and selected what we're calling the key layout. So now we've said this is what's this is what's supposed to be performed within the building by how many people, et cetera. This is the way we want our building to be shaped. And now that we have that, the modifications that are happening in design are happening within those boundaries, which is important, which means you shouldn't expect to come in and see the building moving around, but what you may come in and see is, for example, when we do schematic design update, where were we going to put the gym versus the kitchen, et cetera, in the core spaces? That's been a very deep discussion that we've had within our design meetings. We've also looked at an option for what we're calling district maintenance and storage underneath the back part where the core spaces is, but underneath that space. This is something that what I'm hopeful is that we'll have information to you during the schematic design so that you can have an idea of costs if there's nothing there versus if there is a space there for that type of activity. Mr. Dolan's working on the programming and needs there because there are things that we could change. If we put less parking in, we may have vehicles at other locations. And really, we have to look at the programming there. That's not something that's going to resolve itself immediately. And I want to be direct in saying, we're not going to let this hold up the rest of the building because we have some time to think about it and know how it's going to work. It could end up being an alternate for bidding and design as well. So, but when you have the opportunity to create a space like that, it needs to be examined and a lot of good thought has to go into that. And that's happening at the design team meetings, but we're not going to let that hold up the entire building on its own.
I don't want to start a whole separate conversation. I just want to make sure I'm understanding. When you talk about district maintenance or storage, you're talking about an additional maintenance or storage location, or are you talking about potentially moving what's at the high school? And that's what I'm saying. I don't want to open a whole new conversation. I'm just trying to understand
So
in my
what
head.
we're looking at is if you recall the part of the key that you put your fingers on, but that's where the core spaces is. If on the downhill side behind the elementary school, if you come in there, you could come underneath the gym and the cafeteria and those spaces. So creating that space there so that some of or as much of as reasonable, and that depends on programming, could come over from the high school so that you could have a better use of space in other locations. Does that make sense?
Yes, thank you. I just wanted to make sure I understood what the proposal was.
The last thing that we noted here was just that construction management selection has occurred. The next slide talks about our work since the last update. Breslin has been working with the administration, and I say this in that manner because I sit in these meetings when we talk about the refinement of the programming and what space needs to be near what other space, which we generally have down, although there are refinements because we get a lot of good input from administration. And that process has been going on as we've been going through the schematic design process. ELA has been working on site due diligence, meaning where are the trees, what are the trees, do we have to take them down, where is the geothermal field, starting to look at where all of our utilities are, all the things that we have to check once and check twice to make sure that we minimize our opportunity for those words that you said in the last agenda item that I won't repeat here. And that's going well. You'll see a lot more on what's happening with the site as we move forward in the next couple of months and start to get ready to talk about permitting. And again, continued discussion and work by the district, led by Mr. Dolan, on what's really going to be needed if we were to take that option for district storage and maintenance.
Can you just define a word you have up here? What are space adjacencies?
So I'll give you an example of an easy space adjacency. We want to have our kitchen next to our cafeteria. So the kitchen is adjacent to the cafeteria. But what gets interesting is, do we want the cafeteria nearest the main entry where the cafeteria could be used during off hours, or do we want the gym there? So we have to start to figure out where those things go together and what the priorities are. So there are some natural adjacencies like kitchen, cafeteria, and there are some more subtle ones like that we have to choose from, like does the gym go closer to the front of the building, or does the cafeteria go there? And those are the space
Like, don't put
adjacencies.
the music room next to the speech and language
That's right.
pathology teacher,
Very good
which
example.
just happened to my daughter-in-law.
Oh, no.
Every now and then, there are some doozies.
They
Lucky
moved,
they got her.
they moved it, but that's a space adjacency.
That's
a
exactly
programmatic
correct.
one.
Yep,
That's
that's a
exactly
great
correct.
example.
She is the music teacher.
The next slide that we have is about communication. And I'm looking forward to this dialogue because we have been working and we made light of watching film on the board, so we understand kind of what the board may be thinking or how to work best within the community, given the communications that we like to have at Radnor. And so we've worked pretty hard to put together things that I will say are consistent and build upon each other and communicate out to different audiences. So what we're doing right now as a team, we have biweekly design meetings. And what happens after those design meetings is I will write an email update that has some, that's intended to come out biweekly, so that at least twice a month you're seeing, hey, these are the things that are happening. It's kind of it's a more detailed version of what's happening in this meeting, and the administration and the board is seeing it at least twice a month. So that information comes out through, I think it came out through Mr. Dolan this week. So that is something that you've just seen in an email form. That is intending to come out every 2 weeks. There are design team meeting minutes that are kept by Breslin, and distribution of those minutes isn't, ever appropriate, but distribution of what's been going on is. So we do that with the email. Then there will be steering committee meetings, and I think we're going to resolve some of those dates tomorrow, but we want to have a couple of those steering committee meetings very quickly in the near future. The steering committee information will be information that's drawn out of those design meetings and all the processes we have, so that that type of thing can be a good dialogue with the steering committee and bring them up to date without inundating them with details that aren't appropriate for a steering committee. They're available, but they're not necessarily presented because it's not necessary to present that deep of information. Then we have our monthly facilities committee meeting and our monthly board meetings. And so this type of update will happen here. It can be reiterated at a board meeting. Sometimes we'll bring, for example, the schematic design and the schematic design estimate will be brought to the board meeting in September so that everybody can see it and have a dialogue about it. And yet we'll provide another opportunity for review and thoughts, and then really waiting until October for the board to consider voting on schematic design and schematic design estimate to say, yes, can move on or move on with this direction, et cetera. Also within that group, and not noted here, is that we'll have community meetings, and I'm actually skipping ahead to the third bullet point. But those community meetings will be a combination of all these things with graphic design, or graphic depiction, I should say, of the design from Breslin and ELA, so that we can project out to the community what it is that we've been doing, get input as we would like to, and make sure that everybody is aware of what's happening in the project.
Quick question. I'm blanking on this. Were you part of the team when the middle school was built?
I personally wasn't. My colleagues that are on this project. My one colleague, Mike Crane, he was.
Okay,
I personally was not.
okay, but Mike was.
Yes.
Thank you.
He was the project manager during construction, so he was involved a bit in pre-construction, but not as much as what we're doing right now.
Okay. There was a lot of community interest on the middle school. And I just, sometimes when I say things about making sure how we're, addressing community concerns and listening, making sure that we get this information out to the community, it's through the lens of having been here in the community when the middle school generated a lot of community interest. It's similar in that we are building a new building on the same location, and, there'll be impacts, good impacts, but impacts.
Well,
So,
with the desire of transparency and really to make sure everybody is aware, that becomes important. And I think how we handle those will be born out of what's happening with the design team and the administration and our best thoughts on it within input from the board so that we can go out and do that. And of course, we're going to learn from community meeting number 1 to community meeting number 2 how we want to make adjustments. And I think that's really to this particular point on number 2 there. I'm perfectly fine with good suggestions on how to make this the best fit for how we want to communicate about Ithan and through the board and to the community. So anything goes, and I'm completely open to how we adjust this. What I would request is that we just find ways to build on the information and not take tangents that become other exercises with, and kind of take our eye off the ball. And so we started out that way, hoping to give you a good frame of reference and then refine that. Work plan this month. Schematic design is continuing. As I said, we have a meeting coming up tomorrow. And the site due diligence and design for civil engineering is continuing by ELA.
excuse me, Mr. Dolan, can you just move the page forward just for the?
Oh, I'm
Thank
sorry.
you. No, my bad.
Also, when you say this month, you would just, so I'm clear, August or September or kind of the two?
Thank you for asking that question. When I say this month, I mean between when we're sitting here now and when we sit here next time. So approximate month, but anytime I say this month, I generally mean between our meetings where we're together here. We will, about on August 31st, receive documents from Breslin so that we can do a schematic design estimate. Now, Breslin did a robust estimate that has soft costs, meaning all the costs in rock construction, dollars set aside for site work, as well as a cost per square foot for the new building and the demolition, et cetera. So what we are anticipating is that we'll be doing our estimate. If that estimate comes in higher than what Breslin was looking at before, we're going to be looking at ways to give you opportunity to modify the scope and reduce that anticipated expenditure. If we find out that it's really close, we're going to give you some ideas anyway so that you can manage the budget to the best that you can while maintaining program. I always want to state, if there are any cost implications where we're trying to reduce costs or find ways to avoid expense, if there is something that impacts a program, I'm going to be doing this and saying, just understand that this impacts the program. Things that are easy to do, which I'll call value engineering, that don't impact anything and you wouldn't even notice it, like change the foundations so that the foundations cost less, but the building still sits there and is, just as stable as ever. That's a fantastic thing to be able to do because you don't even see it. So we're going to be looking at all those things, and we're going to be starting that during the schematic design estimate with the idea that we're going to get that in front of you as we move into September so that we can talk about what the design looks like and what that estimate looks like and where our cost expectations are compared to the budget that was set back when Breslin looked at it with programming and all that stuff. So the one thing that I want everybody to be aware of is the way that we do this is collaboratively. We will do an estimate. That'll be a draft estimate. The first thing we'll do is call Breslin, and we'll have a meeting and say, this is what we're seeing. Is this what you intended us to see? Share numbers so that when we show up here in front of the district, Breslin and SiteLogic are both saying the same thing. You're not going to find us at odds. You're not going to find us disagreeing. And hopefully on anything we have to make a recommendation on, we'll be exactly on the same page. That's the intent, including what our expectations are of cost of the project, which you'll be seeing in about a month. So that'll be a lot of the work that occurs. And of course, we'll be working on the communications portion as well. The schedule for the project in the memorandum that will come out with the board packet on Friday, I'm going to put those scheduled dates in a table at the end of that memorandum just for ease of access. As we move on, we'll have a detailed schedule that has permitting and all that other stuff with us that'll be in bar chart form that we'll issue as a separate document. I will encourage you to go ahead and look at the last page in conjunction with this page because they are a breakout of dates from the written information. As I noted, we're going to be getting information from Breslin so that we can do our estimate. That estimate is going to be reported at the regular board meeting on September 26th. So you're going to see what the schematic design is, and you're going to see what the estimate is. The intention is that from that meeting until the next facilities committee meeting on October 10th, you'll have time to review it, develop more questions, and be able to have a dialogue, which I believe will be here and will conclude then. We'll be at this meeting in October, and then we'll conclude in the October board meeting itself. And finally, with the opportunity for the school board to consider telling everybody move on to design development or next stage of design, or move on to design development, and here are some comments that we want you to take into consideration. It's quite appropriate for the board members to say, here are things that we want you to explore. We want you to find more options to reduce costs. We want you to do this or that, and we expect those type of comments and guidance. And I think that is what you expect to do as well. Those dates are shown on the following page, and that's really what we've been doing, what we've been planning, and how we've been working on our communication, all of which we'd be happy to take your feedback on.
And I just want to chime in. So the board, and we've talked a little bit about, when do we bring things to a committee? When do we bring things to the full board? And something this large, this important, we're not trying to bypass this committee, but we also realize there are parts to this that should just come to the full board. So that's what we're trying to do in September. Instead of coming to this committee, we'll go to actually the full board for the schematic design at the September board meeting, taking the feedback that we heard from the board, try to give 2 months or, a month at least when we have to make larger decisions if possible. We're trying to build in that extra time for, not a decision in September, but a decision on the schematic design in October. That gives us then the opportunity to, if we talk about the September board meeting, the October facilities committee can have further discussion, and then also then at the October actual board meeting for the vote. So that this schedule is also based on feedback.
I'm going to jump in and say thank you very much. This looks really comprehensive, really thorough. Dr. Batchelor, Mr. Dolan, thank you. I'm sure leadership as well. Your thought of how to approach making sure the board is informed with, information to digest and then, perhaps ask their own questions the night of the September 26th board meeting, or channel it to the October facilities committee meeting to then be prepared to make a vote. That, to my way of thinking, that is exactly the appropriate way. So thank you. I think it's balancing. We don't want to have a bunch of extra meetings, but it's a big decision, and the board needs, board members who don't have the privilege of serving on facilities have just as much responsibility and interest, frankly. This is a board that's really dedicated, and they want to be a part of this and want to be able to ask their questions. So I really appreciate this kind of plan and this timeline, so thank you.
I'm anxiously awaiting, not anxiously, I'm excitedly awaiting the schedule when it comes out in the next board packet. I have all kinds of questions, but I just want to, I respect that you may need a few days to finalize that, and I'm looking forward to it.
So the schedule is going to look very much like the May 17th schedule that you saw. It's tabular. It's not exciting in any way. I will tell you, because of the way of what Mrs. Stern just said, we are, instead of having a September approval of schematic, that's moved to October. However, the design doesn't stop. So it's really not going to get in the way. That thoughtful process is not going to get in the way and slow us down. I will tell you, I think that it's our job to not push this process, but I actually said to Mr. Dolan in his office before we came into the meeting, it's a gentle hand on the back of the process, keeping it moving, because we want to keep things moving. And my goal has been, if we can get out to bid at a good time, we're going to get the best numbers, and we want to finish the project not in the summertime for the rush, but finish it earlier than that, because regardless of when we finish that job, we're going to have to take the building down and do the site work in that summer anyway. I don't want to be finishing the building, taking the old building down and doing this. I don't want to do all that at once. So that's not going to give the community the best outcome. It's not going to give the community the best value for dollar. So that gentle hand on the back of the process is what you're going to see. Please don't be frustrated with me, but you will see as construction manager, that's what we're trying to manage, doing those things right and doing them in a timely but thoughtful way.
So just to that point, when you're looking at the timeline, so it sounds to me that ideally you would have had us vote on schematic in September, but you're going to present it in September, we'll vote on it in October. If you have a series of other dates, that ideally there's some other design decision you need in February, and that's when you want it, then I would suppose that one way to approach it is, we want to move the process along, give the little gentle nudge in February. So we're going to, all of the administration and you at Site Logic, will make sure you have your ducks in a row to do a rollout the month before you want a decision from us.
That's right.
Yeah,
We
got
can't ask you to make decisions on partial information, and we cannot ask any of us to start construction when we don't have our permits. But if we push all that along gently, and we still honor the things that Dr. Batchelor talked about in terms of providing the time, we have the gift of that little bit of overlap that I spoke about, so that it was a date that was set before I came on board. It's a date that I see we can absorb into the schedule. And as I said, I want to just continue to press, because I know that if we can bid out at a good time and finish at a good time, the community's going to get the best value, and the board's going to have done the best it could for the community.
Yeah, this is great. Thank you so much for this update. This is very thorough, and I think it will be helpful in the executive summary or the draft memo that you're preparing for the board for next week. I guess the end of this week, for our regular business meeting, it'll be helpful. And knowing also that if there are any special requests or tweaks to that, summary of where we are in the process, that all board members are free to chime in with suggestions or questions as we, move forward. So thank you so much for that update. That was very informative.
Thank you.
Any other final comments on the item update? I'll take that as a no. So given that, we will move on to public comment, and I believe there is none. So with that, the meeting is adjourned. Have a good evening.
Thanks. Have a great week.
Thank you all.